What if events went differently in The Incredibles, and Mr. Incredible, the world's greatest superhero, saw something in Buddy Pine that no one else did? Potential. Welcome back, my fellow watchers of the multiverse, to yet another what if scenario. And it's great to be doing another Pixar what if, and looking at what could have happened with Mr. Incredible instead of rejecting Buddy's enthusiastic offer to become his sidekick. What if Mr. Incredible took a chance on the eager young fan? Would Buddy's idolization and dedication prove to be the perfect complement to Mr. Incredible's superhero skills? Or would it lead to a disastrous partnership? Let's explore the world where Mr. Incredible says yes to Buddy Pine, and discover how this alternate scenario would change the fate of supers everywhere. But before we dive into this thought-provoking scenario with you, if you guys do enjoy these different scenarios by, exploring different infinity possibilities of the multiverse, I would highly recommend considering supporting my work on Patreon and the Substack. Your support enables me to create more content, dive deeper into the what-ifs, and push boundaries through the imagination on this channel. So thank you for being a part of this journey, and let's dive into this fascinating world of what if. Buddy Pine, the self-proclaimed biggest fan of Mr. Incredible, will do anything to prove himself a worthy sidekick of one of the world's greatest superheroes. He is certainly a genius in his own right, and the boy's inventions could put him on par with even the strongest of heroes. So, what if the hero noticed the hidden potential in Buddy and decided to take the boy under his wing? Location: Metroville, Illinois. Time: 7:41 a.m. Walking down the sidewalk, Buddy Pine had his nose stuck in a magazine called Heroes Weekly. The periodical was dedicated to updating citizens on the lives of superheroes around the world, and on the cover of this week's issue was none other than Buddy's favorite hero, Mr. Incredible. The boy smiled as he flipped through the pages of the magazine, and he marked every page that included his #1 hero with a black ink pen. Buddy soon heard a familiar voice call out to him from behind, but it was not a friendly voice, and the boy quickened his pace. Suddenly, his magazine was snatched from his hands, and Buddy looked up to see that it was Tyler who was responsible. The black-haired boy was a few months older than Buddy, and they attended the same elementary school. Tyler was known as the most popular kid in 5th grade due to his relation to Dynagui, who was his uncle. Tyler and his friends were riding on their bikes, and they all zoomed past Buddy, snickering as they did so. Their leader held up the magazine with a mischievous smirk on his face, while looking back at Buddy. He then proceeded to throw the book into a nearby bush, and continued on down the sidewalk with his gang right behind him. Buddy ran to the bush searching for his magazine, and he breathed a sigh of relief when he discovered the book was intact. Ever since the group of bullies saw Buddy in his homemade Incrediboy costume last year for Halloween, the poor boy has been their primary target for teasing. They knew how it was Buddy's dream to become Mr. Incredible's sidekick, but they clearly did not believe the boy had what it takes to fight alongside superheroes. And Tyler and his goons made sure to let Buddy know that every chance they got. But today, things were going to be different. Today, Buddy would prove himself to all his classmates. Location: Metroville Elementary. Gym. Time: 9 a.m. Gathered within the school gym, students, teachers, and parents were waiting for the science fair to finally start. Each table showed a different project, from baking soda volcanoes to icky slime, and most of the kids were quite enthusiastic about sharing their projects with their families and educators. But none were as excited about the event as Buddy, who eagerly awaited for the judges to pass his table. Speaking of the judges, they were a few tables down, stopping to observe the project of a young girl who made a model rocket. She explained to the judges how she was interested in working at NASA when she was older, and the judges quietly listened while writing some notes down in their notepads. As he was standing by his table, an older woman ran up to Buddy from behind and pulled him into a bone-crushing bear hug. Buddy did not need to turn around to know it was his mother, Linda Pine. Her curly, blonde hair was pulled back into a ponytail, and she was wearing a blue blazer with small golden flowers embroidered all over it. She bombarded her son with kisses all over his face, and Buddy struggled to free himself from Miss Pine. When he finally did, Buddy quickly wiped his face of his mother's saliva. Miss Pine laughed, but her focus was now on Buddy's table. There was something on top of the table, but the woman could not tell what it was because it was hidden underneath a white blanket. She grabbed a bit of the cloth to try and peek under it, but Buddy instantly stopped her, forcing his mother to let go of the blanket. Although Miss Pine has a pretty good idea what her son's project was, and it made her worried. Knowing of her son's dream of being a sidekick, Miss Pine was trying to be supportive of it, but she knew how dangerous the job could be. After all, her husband worked for the NSA, National Supers Agency, and he was constantly reminded of the chaos that resulted from hero work, and his own life ended because of it. Miss Pine was pulled from her thoughts when the judges stopped at Buddy's table. One of them was an old gentleman with a bald head and a thick pair of glasses. The second man was middle-aged, and he was wearing a dark green turtleneck. The last of the judges, a woman around the same age as Miss Pine, had her short brown hair in a bob hairstyle, and her nails were painted bright red. The trio looked upon the table with a mixture of confusion and intrigue. What was lying beneath that blanket? They each wondered. But Buddy was ready to explain his project to the adults, and Miss Pine stood back to let her son have the floor. The boy gave the judges a brief speech on his interest in superheroes and how he had invented something that would help a normal citizen like himself keep up with the supers. Grabbing the blanket, Buddy hurriedly pulled it off to reveal his project, which turned out to be a pair of boots. But these were no ordinary boots, no. These metal-plated footwear were equipped with rocket boosters that allowed the user to fly at high speeds, like the hero's Stratogale or Metaman. In theory, that is. Buddy has not actually tested the rocket boots yet, but he was confident that his invention would work. As the boy moved to put on the boots, he was stopped by the old man, who silently shook his head at Buddy. The younger man with the turtleneck soon explained to Buddy that such a project as his should not have been allowed in the fair. Sure, there were students who had rockets, but they were models. And here Buddy was with actual rocket boosters attached to boots. Where did he even get those from? That was a question for later. But as of now, the judges agreed that while the invention was creative and they were curious about whether it actually worked, the project could be considered a dangerous weapon. They had no choice but to disqualify Buddy from the science fair, and the trio made mental notes to speak with his teacher about it. They apologized to the Pine family before moving on to the next table. At first, Buddy just stood there, silently processing what the judges had said to him. Miss Pine could see the hurt in her son's eyes, and she reached out to Buddy in an effort to comfort him. But the next thing she knew, Buddy sprinted towards the exit doors and disappeared into the hallway. Miss Pine hurried after her child, but was stopped when a hand rested on her shoulder. The woman spun around to face whoever had grabbed her. Linda immediately felt relieved when she saw that it was a friend. She let out a breath while holding a hand over her chest. Standing before her was an exceptionally tall man, with broad shoulders and a slim waist. He also had short blonde hair and eyes that shined a brilliant blue. The man smiled kindly at Miss Pine while apologizing for startling her. Once she had calmed down, he requested for Linda to allow him to talk to Buddy in her stead. Location: Metroville Elementary. Playground. Time 9:13 a.m. The squeaking of the swing Buddy was sitting on was the only thing that could be heard, as he was the only occupant of the playground at the moment. He just could not believe he had been disqualified just like that. All because of some safety regulations? It was not like the boots were going to explode at any second. Maybe. Buddy was so caught up in his own thoughts that he failed to hear a pair of footsteps, gradually growing louder the closer they came to the boy's position. It was not until the newcomer shoved Buddy's rocket boots into his face that he finally said something. He jumped out of the swing and turned around, believing that whoever had approached him was his mother. After the way he stormed out of the gym, Buddy knew Miss Pine was worried and would give chase. But when Buddy saw who actually had followed him, his jaw dropped instantly at the sight. All he could do was stare at the tall man before him, unable to comprehend that the person standing in front of Buddy was the last person he would have expected to see. When he found his voice again, Buddy could only utter a single word: incredible. As in his number one superhero, Mr. Incredible. Indeed, Mr. Incredible was here, right here with Buddy. The hero stood proudly before the boy, wearing his iconic black and blue uniform, with the giant eye on his chest, and a big red dot atop the letter. On his face, Mr. Incredible wore a black mask that covered the area around his eyes, which acted as protection, so the hero's identity is not revealed to the world. Although, the fact that no one has figured out Mr. Incredible's identity with his poor disguise will forever remain a mystery. The superhero held out Buddy's rocket boots to him again, but this time, the boy did take them back, expressing his gratitude to Mr. Incredible. But while he was extremely excited to be meeting his favorite hero in person, Buddy had to wonder, what was Mr. Incredible doing at his school of all places? So, Buddy asked him just that, and Mr. Incredible nodded, knowing the boy would want some explanation for his sudden appearance. The hero explained to Buddy that he would be the one to present the first place medal to the winner of this year's science fair. While it was not traditional for a superhero to do such a thing, Mr. Incredible had volunteered because he was genuinely curious about what Metroville Elementary students had to offer, and he hoped one day he would have kids of his own attending school in Metroville as well, showing their fellow classmates and teachers just how talented they were sure to be. Mr. Incredible smiled at the thought, and an image of his fiancée flashed through his mind. To think, in just a few days they would be at the altar, exchanging their vows. But getting back to the topic at hand, Mr. Incredible also told Buddy how he had overheard the conversation with the judges, and how Buddy had been disqualified. When Mr. Incredible had seen the boy's invention, even the hero was disappointed that he would not be able to see the boots in action, at least not in the science fair. But Mr. Incredible pointed to the rocket boots, and then asked if Buddy had already tested them before today. Buddy was honest and said no, but he believed the invention would work as he intended. Trusting the boy, Mr. Incredible suggested that they take the boots on a test drive just for fun, but Buddy was a bit hesitant about the idea, seeing as the judges had labeled his project as dangerous. What if they were right? What if something happened the moment he activated the boots? Knowing Buddy had his doubts, Mr. Incredible patted the boy on his back and reassured him that nothing bad would happen. And with the hero by his side, nothing could possibly go wrong, right? It did not take long for Mr. Incredible to convince Buddy, and the boy soon eagerly placed his rocket boots on his feet. Once they were on, Mr. Incredible gave Buddy a thumbs up, encouraging the boy to turn the boots on. Buddy moved to press the small red buttons on the outside of each of his boots. The moment he did, the rockets activated and he began to hover above the ground. Buddy struggled to maintain his balance, turning and flipping out of control as he gradually rose into the air. Before he got too high, however, Mr. Incredible reached out and grabbed Buddy's leg. He smiled up at the boy, and he told Buddy that whenever he was ready, he would let go. Letting out a few deep breaths, Buddy finally nodded his head, signaling to Mr. Incredible that he was ready to try flying on his own again. Mr. Incredible slowly let go and watched as Buddy again fought to steady himself. But soon enough, Buddy was able to right himself, and a wide, toothy smile spread across his face. Even Mr. Incredible looked proud of the boy's small victory. Now that he was stable, Buddy became a little cocky, bragging that he could fly over Metroville skyscrapers with ease. Mr. Incredible laughed at Buddy's claim and even said he would like to see that. Buddy believed the superhero was joking, but after seeing the serious look on Mr. Incredible's face, the boy's eyes widened. He immediately regretted what he said, but he did not want to back down when his idol was right here. What would Mr. Incredible think of him if he did that? But that was when an unexpected visitor came running towards the duo from the school building. Linda waved at Buddy and Mr. Incredible as she came closer to the playground, and when she was close enough, the woman held out something to her son. In her hands was the costume Buddy had created for his alter ego, Incrediboy. Buddy took the costume from his mother, grateful the woman even thought to bring it for him. The boy suddenly hugged Miss Pine, which was rare since his mother was usually the one who initiated any hugs between them. With that being said, Buddy quickly finished the hug, as he did not want to look lame in front of Mr. Incredible. But in all honesty, Mr. Incredible was not at all bothered by the heartwarming display of affection. In fact, the hero admired the loving relationship Buddy had with Miss Pine, because he knew how loving and caring the woman was towards her son. It would have been a shame if the love was not reciprocated. Excitedly, Buddy ran off back into the school to change. The boy was going so fast that he even tripped on a rock on the way. Miss Pine and Mr. Incredibles were about to come to Buddy's aid, but the boy immediately let them know he was fine with a thumbs up, and he scrambled back to his feet. Mr. Incredible had to laugh at the scene. Location: Metroville, atop the skyscrapers. Time: 9:40 a.m. Buddy zoomed across the sky, his eyes filled with wonder and amazement behind his black mask. There was no way he was flying over Metropolis wearing his superhero uniform with his idol, Mr. Freaking Incredible, running on the rooftops below him. Lowering himself closer to the skyscrapers, Buddy waved at his hero, who waved back with a smile. Mr. Incredible did advise Buddy to stay closer to the ground and to keep his eyes peeled, but the boy insisted that he was fine. But because he was distracted, something crashed right into Buddy's face. It turned out to be a crow, and it instantly started pecking at the poor boy's visage. Buddy did manage to get the bird off, but he did not come out of the encounter unscathed, ignoring the stinging pain from his wounds. Buddy forced a smile as he turned to Mr. Incredible, who was standing with his arms crossed, as if to say, "I told you so." Buddy then decided that maybe it was time for him to land and catch his breath. Landing next to Mr. Incredible on a random rooftop, Buddy sat down on the concrete and let out a deep sigh. The boy was certainly tired, but he was also having the time of his life. Suddenly, Buddy pinched his arm and exclaimed aloud, "Ouch!" in response to the action. Mr. Incredible asked Buddy what he was doing, concerned as to why the boy would harm himself like that. But Buddy explained that he wanted to be sure that he was not dreaming right now, and it felt good knowing that everything happening today was indeed real. Mr. Incredible chuckled and took a seat beside Buddy. He asked Buddy why he was so interested in becoming a hero, and Buddy began to tell his life story. He explained to Mr. Incredible how his father worked with the NSA, and he worked within the cleaning division. They were responsible for taking care of the damage caused from superhero battles. When he was helping a group of survivors escape a building that was close to collapsing a few years ago, Mr. Pine sacrificed himself to get them out. And unfortunately, there were no superheroes that were on standby that day. Since the day of his father's passing, Buddy swore that he would become a hero and make sure that no one else in Metroville would be put in harm's way ever again, especially his mother, who was all he had left of his family. When Buddy finished his story, Mr. Incredible felt an immense amount of guilt. While Metroville is the city Mr. Incredibly mainly prioritized, it was not unusual for him to go off on missions in other locations to help his fellow supers. He must have been away on a mission when Buddy's father died. If only he had stayed in Metroville. Buddy was worried when he noticed the serious look on me, Incredible's face. The superhero always wore a smile, so when he wore such a stern expression, both villains and civilians became anxious. Buddy was the same, because he was not sure what was going through Mr. Incredible's mind to make him look that way. Did the boy say something wrong? Did he upset me, Incredible? His concerns, however, were put to rest when Mr. Incredible placed his hand on Buddy's shoulder and gave it a gentle squeeze. It was amazing how someone as strong as Mr. Incredible could have such a light touch. The super apologized to Buddy, which came as a surprise to the boy. What was he apologizing for? Buddy thought to himself. Mr. Incredible also promised he would try harder to make sure the citizens of Metroville are safe. Buddy simply nodded at me. Incredible's words. He was just not sure to respond to the hero. So, Buddy felt it was about time to change the subject. Things were beginning to feel awkward. Since Buddy had told his idol much about his personal life, he thought it was only fair that he ask a few questions about Mr. Incredible's own life, right? But while Buddy had plenty of things he wanted to ask his hero, there was only one that truly mattered to him. And so, Buddy asked, "Why did you become a hero?" Of course, if this was an interview or any public appearance, Mr. Incredible would have simply said, because he wanted to do the right thing, or something along those lines. But for Buddy, Mr. Incredible felt he owed the boy much more than the standard answer. The super began by telling Buddy of an incident that occurred a couple of years back. This was before Mr. Incredible had even thought of doing superhero work. One night, the man was walking home after completing his shift at a local pizza shop. He was just passing an alleyway when he saw a terrible sight. Down the alley, an old man was being harassed by 3 younger men. They could not be no older than Mr. Incredible was at the time, which was around 18. The old man begged for the trio to leave him be, but they were clearly not listening to his pleas. One of them, who was wearing a red cap with a torn leather jacket, stepped closer to the old man and smirked. He insisted that he be given everything in the elder man's wallet, or he and his gang would beat him to a pulp. Clenching his fists, Mr. Incredible could not stand how shameless the 3 men were, willing to beat a poor old man just for a little cash. It did not take long before Mr. Incredible stomped down the alleyway and approached the group. The man with the cap turned around and scowled at the newcomer, and even threatened to beat Mr. Incredible too if he did not walk away. Long story short, the hero did not walk away, and neither did the gang, as he was able to incapacitate each of them in only a few strikes. Once they were down, the old man thanked Mr. Incredible for saving him and offered to pay the younger man for his good deed. But as the elder man pulled out a few $100 bills and looked back up to face his savior, Mr. the Incredibles had disappeared. Finishing the tale, Mr. Incredible went on to explain why he left the old man in such a hurry. He did not want anyone to know about his powers, as he was scared of the idea of being called a freak or abomination. After all, the hero had not known there were other people with superpowers like him, not until a few months later when superheroes began to appear. Mr. Incredible soon realized that he did not have to give up on living a normal life if he became a hero like them. He could be Mr. Incredible and himself. Mr. Incredible looked down at the rocket boots, still on Buddy's feet. He told Buddy that the boy was brave for trying to go down the path of a superhero, even though he did not have powers himself. But like Mr. Pine, not all heroes needed powers, right? Mr. Incredible stood up and stretched before speaking again, asking Buddy if he would like to go on another ride, but this time they would ride in the Super's pride and joy, the Incredibola. Buddy gasped, and his eyes widened to the point that they almost looked as though they would pop out of his head. The boy nodded his head furiously, and Mr. Incredible laughed at the sight. Deep down, Mr. Incredible knew Buddy was more than capable of being a hero. With a bit of training and some encouragement, the boy will be out there saving lives in no time. And who would be a better mentor for Buddy than his favorite hero? And that is going to be it for this scenario of what if Mr. Incredible took Buddy. Imagine if Mr. Incredible had actually said yes to Buddy. It would have been very interesting if he had finally accepted Buddy. Then Buddy would never become Syndrome, and none of the events would have ever have happened that way as it did in the original timeline. So again, I do want to say, what did you think of this alternate scenario? Let me know in the comments down below. With that being said, my fellow watchers of the multiverse, I would highly recommend that you guys subscribe, like, share, and turn those notifications on so you and your friends are all up to date with the latest content. And do make sure to check out the Patreon as well as the Substack. It goes a long way. Any support possible goes a long way. That's all I can really say. So again, thank you so much, and I can't wait to continue the what if scenarios. That being said, have a fantastic day. Peace out.